Hey, what's up, everybody? We're going into a tier list. So you want to know kind of what all the decks in set one are? This isn't probably every deck. I probably missed one or two here. There's going to still be some decks popping up. We're still playtesting. But you want to know about every deck? Well, we're going to go look at every deck in set one that people have been playing right now. So I have, right now, there's 23 decks that people have been kind of tinkering with, messing around with, playtesting in set one, which I think is a solid number given set one's only about 120 or so cards. Um, so we're just gonna kind of go through each deck and talk about it. So first deck, Five Attack. So Five Attack is a deck that kind of a lot of these decks are face value. Runs a lot of small Elestrals with high attack stats. Using it to kind of take over the early game, to beat down deck. The goal is to just get over all the other things that are smaller than five and continue from there. I haven't played too much. Actually, I don't think I've played against it at all. I've seen a couple games with it from a community tournament a little bit ago. I think it could be like I think right now it's B, but I feel like it's gonna go down over time because right now because five attack is very useful, it's gonna be very good. But I think over time it might drop. But I think it's a solid B right now. Next, we have Thunderfire Burn. This is using Toxian, Necruff, things like Blazarus, Zeus's spear, all that jazz to try to burn out your opponent quickly. It's not the best burn deck in the world. It has some use. I think it's probably a low B as well. Because it's attack focus and shield is very powerful right now. A lot of good removal for it. Toxian itself is only 4 attack as opposed to 5 attack, so it can get outed by other 1 drops. I think actually I'm gonna put it down to C because it does use a lot of resources. Like it does like to get Blazarus and out for like a finisher. It likes to kind of use eruptions and stuff. There's better burn decks, so I'm gonna give it a C. Foamee Army is a deck that when the Capricorn playtest changes got changed from just Foamee to anything, and Foamee got changed a little bit. We were like, oh, this is gonna be bust. It's gonna be strong. Foamee Army right now is like a D. It's the idea was people are going to just play foamies. They're going to spam on a bunch of really good one drops in water and outvalue their opponent because they can just return all their spirits with sluggles that they get off the foamies and use Capra with like that sluggle and foamies and just chain through a bunch of small water one drops. But it's too slow to work, or rather, not necessarily too slow all the time, but it's too inconsistent. And it requires Capricorn to kill something, which it doesn't always have the ability to do. So it doesn't always work, unfortunately. Next deck we have Froot. Okay, so Froot is Jotaya, Lotagon, Ambrosia, Apple. Some I personally play with a little bit of Thunder Package, a little bit more on the controller side with a lot of counter runes. I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think a lot of people don't play it right to its use because you have to remember when you're playing it, your opponent can't really use Ambrosia or you get advantage from it as well. So I think for Fruit's in a solid B tier right now. I think it's really strong because it kind of has a lot of abilities. Once you get Lotagon out, just to destroy stuff, you can play Lotagon, Rises or Taya that you just ascended out of to get both at the same time. It can do a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a solid B. I think it's a pretty strong deck. It does have the weakness of you have to hold good cards in your hand to get to combo off in a turn to kind of clear out your opponent's board and start swinging in, but it's got a lot of value in it. You can kind of have a little subset of like Earth Beaters in there, or you can kind of go a little bit more for the control side. There's variations on what you can do. I think it's a solid deck, and I think it's a deck that might get better if we get you know some more control cards or more cards that help us get ambrosias and stuff to our hand. But we'll see. Water defense. The idea was to play Galaxy high water defense cards, stuff like that, enablers like using Galaxy to enable high defense. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't know if it's D. It might be C. I mean, it has big attackers in water, which water kind of lacks. It's got tsunami. Tsunami's big in the deck. Vertaco's big in the deck. So it's got the uses of things that'll be like playable, but not necessarily great playable stuff. So I think it's a C. I don't want to say it's bad. St. Harbor. Out of all of the kind of prototype base decks, so Centaur has like two kind of variants, which is like the super slow control Centaur deck, and then like the September combo deck. Both are not great, but they have a huge finisher. I think it's going to probably be like one of the best C tier decks because you have to kind of stick a September on board to get Centaur out. You have to get fully forced on board to protect your Centaur. If Centaur's protected, you're good. You can kind of pop things with him. He's a big threat. The hardest part of the deck is getting Centaur out. If you get Centaur out, the deck is amazing. It's getting him out, and he's probably one of the harder 3-drop elestrals, besides maybe Tefernal, to get out. But when he gets out, he's good. So, I don't know. Maybe I can. Centaur is probably the very last deck in B tier, just because Earth does have a lot of really good options. So maybe Centaur will be the bottom of B tier. It's hard to say. Condiment Control. If you don't know what this deck is, this is kind of like it's Thunder Fire. So ketchup and mustard. The joke is that it looks like a hot dog or condiments, etc. Um, there's a couple variants of it. All the variants I play Leonite and Sonic Core to lock your opponent out from removal options with Hammer for Festus, stuff like that as well for attack power. In early playtesting, it was definitely like a solid B, maybe low A, because if you get a 7 to 9 attack with Hephaestus, Hammer of Hephaestus out, and this guy, and your opponent can't remove it, they're stuck because a lot of people played small things. But now we have cards like, the Voltempest stuff. We have cards like Penterror that can just crash into your Sonic Core and Leonites and get to 15 attack, and the deck doesn't get to 15 attack. It's not as good. It's probably a low B right now because if you know your opponent's deck or going into game 2 or 3 of a match, you know what your opponent's removal options are, you can kind of tailor your game plan to the deck. It's a very hard deck to play because you need to know if your opponent has Earthquake access, Laurel's access, Boom Bats, Kinleos. You need to know what they're going to remove your stuff with. And the deck just says, I'm stopping that specifically. So it has potential. It's hard to play. It's easier to play if you know what your opponent's options are. But it's a fun deck. Or you can just kind of go with the destruction control effect with Boom Bats and Leonites and Kinleos and stuff, which works, but I think the more lock strategy is better. Axiom Control. This is a deck that people probably don't know what this is because it's only popped up in one kind of tournament that we've played, and I think it's like high B, low A. Like the deck is really hard to play against because it's 12 1-drop Elestrals, so it's like 3 Pandas, 3 P-Gust, I think 3 Sorlets, and 3 Boombats or something like that. And the rest are runes. It's got just 3 of, so basically all the control runes. It's got like 3 shields, 3 poison tips, a couple Gorgons, a couple Pandora's boxes. It runs Ambrosia, and the whole point of the deck is to force you to just not have an open board or to just get stopped everywhere which way you're trying to play the game, and they just kind of go, all right, attack you for 1, all right, attack you. The deck just slowly drains you out by attacking you for 1 or 2 every turn and protecting all of its little tiny 1-drops with 2 attack with all the counter runes. And it's a really interesting deck. I think it does have some flaws where it can kind of run out of gas and stuff like that, but it's a very frustrating deck to play against, and it's actually very solid. Just not a lot of people are playing it right now. Not a lot of people have seen the deck in action. Um, it stopped Summer Winds for a few games when we did our community tournament back a bit ago. I think the only deck that beat this deck in the main Swiss rounds was the Condiment Control deck because I just shut off his counter runes and then he couldn't really do anything. Um, but yeah, it's a frustrating deck to play against. It's, if you know like Magic Gathering, it's like your Azorius Control style deck. It's just a pain in the butt. There's not really a finisher strategy other than just I'll just outvalue you for 20 turns. Daaaa Bears. As much as I love the Bears, they're probably D. So I've talked about Bears at length. You can check out my video about the worst cards in Elestrals, and I go over why I think the Bears, specifically Maje Ramp, is not a good card right now. But Janice, teased at least one bear for set 2. So we're gonna see some more bear support. They've got a last minute change to their text, so they're definitely gonna see more of some kind of support of some way. So they might go up, but for set 1, the deck itself is terrible. The payoff is not worth it because the payoff will sacrifice all your bears to get it, and it's not worth. It's just not worth playing the bears. Direct burn, kind of in the vein of fire burn. I think this deck before the last playtest balance changing was probably like a C or D tier. I think it's an upper C now because Krakatuga can remove stuff when you play Eruption now. So if you can go Krakatuga into Eruption, you can now destroy threats and kind of throw burn damage over the wall with Waspire, with Eruptions, Krakatuga, stuff like that. But I think it's kind of like a Wally burn deck that still gets outed by like big things like Penterror can get over most of the cards, Voltempest. I think it's probably an upper C. Like, it works. It's not the best, but it works. Moving on now, we have the discard deck. I want discard deck to be so good, but I don't even think it breaks into B tier. I think it's also probably upperish C tier. It's a little too slow. It has no good early 1-drops, and its payoffs are Type Plant goes into Ivory, or you go into like a Volt, which both can be big attackers, but that's all they really are in the end. Like, and their payoff for discarding your opponent's hand is more discarding. And once you get past, 3 or 4 discards to your opponent, they're going to be out of cards in your hand anyway. Those payoffs aren't going to do anything, and now you're stuck with a bunch of small creatures that don't do anything. So it has potential, maybe if it has a little bit faster or a little bit more cards that have higher power. Maybe if they had a 1-drop that gets boosted for every card in your opponent's underworld or some weird thing. Just if they had a way to get a small Elestral with good attack power or some staying power on the board, I think it could be good. Right now, it's a little bit down. Earth Beatdown. A lot of people are saying like this is like the S tier deck, like along with Voltempest, Summer Winds, etc. I think so. First of all, I don't really know if we can say any of our decks are S tier right now, but I definitely think Earth Beatdown is up there in A tier, like strong A tier. Like it borderlines S. So Earth Beatdown, it just swarms the board with lots of big attackers, hits you really hard, which hits you pretty fast. There are a couple flaws in ways you can attack into the deck. Like if you stop the early game, they usually get stalled out a little bit. They're not going to do so well. If you can get past, the couple Tech Taurus and couple Viseras they play early, they're going to run out of gas. They have to get them back. Their whole game plan is just small, cheap, big attackers that replace themselves or just threats. And they have plenty of ways to go find those threats. It's just you can break it. So I don't think it's S tier. It's definitely a stoppable deck. But it is strong. It's really difficult to play against if you don't know what you're doing at first, and it's just hard to play against a lot of really big attack swarmy stuff. So yeah, it's a solid A tier. Leolock is one of my decks that not too many people have played, but I've definitely seen other people talking about it in the past. Like, oh, that sounds like a cool, fun thing to do. So it's a water fire control deck where your kind of end game is to get Leonite, Trident of Poseidon, Poseidon, Hephaestus, and Hammer of Hephaestus out. Which sounds like a lot of cards, right? Right? That's 5 cards in play. But if you can get those 5 cards in play, you have a 13 attack Leonite where your opponent can't cast Invoke, or no one can cast Invoke runes, to be honest. Your opponent can't cast counter runes. Your Leonite is protected from Elestral effects, and you just have a bunch of attack. So it sounds like a lot to get going, but it's actually somewhat consistent because all you need to do with this deck is get Hephaestus and a Leonite out and a Poseidon. So you need 3 cards because Hephaestus will get you the Poseidon, Trident of Poseidon, and it'll get you the Hammer. And then you just need to draw basically Poseidon to get the counter runes to shut off with Trident of Poseidon. And then Leonite will just be this big 13 attacker. It's hard to out. It stops a lot of things. It can just attack freely. I think this deck's probably a strong B. maybe lower than 5 attack. I definitely think it's stronger than Froot. I do think it's a better version of the kind of Leonite condiment control stuff. 5 attack can kind of out it if they attack faster. Control, Axiom control is just again really good, like frustrating to play against. So I think Leonite probably a strong B. Moving on, Voltempest, right? So now Voltempest is like the big boogeyman right now. Everyone says, what's the meta? Voltempest is the meta. Everyone probably wants me to put Voltempest here. Some people probably want me to put Voltempest here and ban it. I think Voltempest is. I don't think any real deck is S tier right now. I really don't. So everyone's afraid of Voltempest. Voltempest is fast. It hits hard. It's got a big body. I get that. But it also requires you to go into Griffuse, which is an Ascension. It requires you to have, a Divine Rune in play to ascend with Griffuse to get that to going. Like, there are some pieces, and there's disruptible pieces. And I think you can kind of still deal with it reasonably well, especially with a good sideboard. If you have Pandora's Boxes, Gorgon's Gaze stops it, Poison Tipped Arrow stops it. There's a lot of cards that can kind of stop it. So I don't think it's a big boogeyman like S tier gonna win every like meta blah blah blah. Like I don't think it's that good. It's definitely strong along with Earth Beaters. They're definitely strong decks, but they're not oppressive in my opinion in any way or form at the matter. Like I don't know. I don't think they're as oppressive as people say they are right now. Going on to the next deck, we have Maje Ramp. This is a deck that uses things like Tadpuff, Poseidon to get Maje out on like turn 1, turn 2-ish. It's a really fun deck. It can do well. It's probably C tier. I think, yeah. Above water defense. So the pros are Maje protects from Elestral effects. You can play Trident and Poseidon in the deck because you're playing 3 Poseidon to protect from counter rune effects. You can get Maje pretty big as an attacker, but it dies to very, very easily. Your Maje will die to Laurels. Your Maje will die to Earthquake. It could die to Penterror fairly early on. There's a lot of ways to kind of blow it out, and it's a little bit of a combo deck with not the most consistent combo yet because you do need early either like a Tadpuff or a Foamee, and then either a Glauby or a Maje to go, or Glauby to go to Maje or Maje to get the big body out. It's got potential. Maybe get some more support in the future. Maybe get some more rampy stuff and water to kind of get to it faster. But right now, it has the chance to blow things out. It has a chance to be big and threatening, but I don't think it's that strong right now. I think there's obviously better decks. Mill is like probably the best D tier deck. Everyone was afraid of the Humbus combo. Humbus combo doesn't work. Humbus got nerfed just for future proofing. It's a fun deck archetype. I hope we see some more Mill archetype in the future. But right now it's garbage. It's trash. It's not good. it's just not good. But it's fun. Everyone likes to play. Well, not everyone likes to play Mill, but Mill is fun to some. I like Mill. It's controversial, but yeah, D tier deck. So don't worry about it. If you don't like Mill, you don't have to play it much. It's not going to do a lot of damage to you. Mono T. So Mono Thunder. This is Imperial. You generally have to run. What the minimum is 14 Thunder Spirits to play this deck because you need to get Imperial out. Get Imperial out, you need to have Signectric with 12 Thunder in your Spirit deck. Reveal the 12 Thunder, you get Imperial out. This deck is honestly, I think it's pretty solid. It's pretty easy to get the Imperial out early. Imperial, kind of like Voltempest, is a threat that, actually, I think maybe more like here. Yeah, so it kind of like Voltempest, it just kind of can sit back, use its ability, and not have to attack until it's kind of cleared the way. Whereas Voltempest is burning you directly, Imperial is kind of trying just to clear the way. The biggest drawback of the deck is you're kind of stuck running about 16, maybe 17 Thunder Spirits. So you're stuck in a pretty heavy, solid, just Thunder deck. So you don't get access to everything you might want, but you have enough space to maybe put in some Tsunamis, some protection cards, stuff like that. The deck, honestly, it can work pretty well, especially since there's a lot of stall in Thunder. So, you can play Riceros turn 1, you play Extrabit turn 1, try to find your pieces to get to Imperial faster, stuff like that. It works. Against some of the faster decks, you can side out the Imperials and your Signetrix for like Galvenoms to just kind of 2-for-1 wide boards. So the deck works well. There's some sideboard tech options you can do against some faster decks or decks that you might not be able to answer as easily. It's a fun deck. I think more people should try it out, but it is a little annoying to be stuck in one element, especially in set 1 when we only have like 20 something thunder cards to work with. But it is a fun deck. I do suggest try it out. It's stronger than you might think. Penterror Beatdown is when Penterror was released, everyone's like, "Oh, Penterror is going to be so scary." Not really. It is very expensive. You do get the wind toolbox stuff, but wind is already very expensive. Maybe this is another B tier deck. It's hard to say. Like, the deck has on paper like, oh man, you could play Penterror. It's huge. You get it out really fast. It's hard to deal with. If they do deal with it, you'll get all the little guys. And then if you have all the little guys out with Island of Aeolia, you're gonna have a bunch of little beaters. It's gonna be terrible. But that's so many spirits, because just to kind of Penterror, if you're crashing everything with Penterror, that's 6 spirits. Penterror dies. Let's say you go find 2 Twindras and 2 Hydrakes. That's another 6 spirits. And Island of Aeolia to make them pump. That's another spirits. So it's 13 spirits for this crazy board state. So it's expensive, and that's the biggest draw. If Penterror wasn't expensive, if Penterror costs like 2 or 3 to get out, it'd be probably upper B tier. I think because of how expensive it is to get out, it's probably lower on the list. Maybe even C tier, but the threat of Penterror is a threat. I will say that. Like, if you are playing a deck that can't deal with the 15 attacker on turn 1 or 2, it's threatening, but it's probably not super powerful, but it's up there. It definitely has some potential. Strato Rush. I think this is probably an upper C tier deck. It's got, again with the wind deck, it's got a point where it's just very expensive to run. And Strato currently, with the last balance patches and changes, it got pretty nerfed. I think it's like a 9 attack base now. So it doesn't really beat over any of the other 3 drops and some 2 drops with some simple buffs. It can't really hit over. It's probably like, it's cool that it can just wipe your opponent's back row, so you can just start attacking with stuff. But because its stats kind of low, if your opponent gets out the early Voltempest, like, and you match your Voltempest with a Strato, you can't get out the Voltempest. So, you know, if your opponent rushes out a Penterror, your Strato isn't doing anything against Penterror. It's not doing anything against Imperial. It's not doing anything against even Majesty. If your opponent Majesty, like, any deck that goes anywhere near tall, it's not really getting over, but it does do well at kind of getting over some of the smaller decks and decks that rely on protection, like the Axiom counter deck, where if they don't have the poison tipped arrow and they don't have Pandora's box, they're not playing the game, because Strato just says, okay, goodbye all your back row, goodbye all your back row, goodbye all your back row, which is good. But it's got some flaws. It's expensive. I don't think it's that great, but it's fun to play. Summer Winds is probably up in the B tiers, or yeah, I mean, I should probably just take out the S tier here, you know, like, I don't think anything in the S tier. Summer Winds, probably one of the stronger mid-range, well, actually it is the strongest mid-range deck I think in the game. It's very bursty, kind of comes out of nowhere. It was like a plague on our early playtesting, where Jay Johnny was just destroying people with it left and right for like weeks at a time. Then it got some nerfs. It dropped down. If it didn't, like, if Aeolus is still as strong as it was, stuff like that, it would probably be an easy top A tier like deck. But I think with some of the nerfs, it's a little bit B tier. People kind of adapted to, you know, if you know what the deck is, you know they're gonna burst you for about 8 damage randomly, not randomly, but when you're open, so you know what to expect. You can play around it a little bit better. So I think it's a solid B, maybe low A. I'll put it on top of B right now. Johnny might kill me for that, but upper B at least. And then we have TadpuffX. So this is a really fun deck that people were like, Oh, we have Barabog, Zephrog, Krakatuga, all these water plus one element cards that all burn my opponent. That's gonna be so cool to play. It's like I think it's like D tier. Maybe it could be C tier. Nah. Like it has potential. It's kind of got the issue with the ramp deck where if you don't have Tadpuff or Foamee early, you kind of just get stuck. Uh, I did put Water Ramp. This is kind of like the aggressive version of Water Ramp. I think I'm gonna put it low C. It's a super fun deck to play, especially if you play like Barabog turn one. They can't break over it, and they don't play Earth or Water, so everything they're playing, they're just burning themselves with. It's hilarious. I've only won like one best of three with the deck. It's super fun to play. There are some options to it. If you get an early Zephrog out, you can kind of control your opponent's hand. It's a super fun deck. It's got some potential. If we had more ways to kind of consistently get Tadpuff in a Water X card in our hand, it'd be good. But without those consistencies, I think it's kind of on the low C tier, give or take. Thunder Nexus. This is a deck that I've only played in a free for all game with 3 players. And it's a super fun deck. So it's a deck that kind of built around like Toxian, Estrabit, Circle the Sky, Alter the Stars, all the Nexus effects and the Thunder Receive effects. You do some burn damage, do some filtering, lots of fun stuff. You run like some amount of Olympus in the deck because you do a lot of Nexus and you get a lot of spirits on board. You make big things. Your Zeus makes things easier to out with your Thunder cards. It's a really fun deck to play. How good it is, it's probably in like the Thunderfire burn range. It has some flaws where you do need to stick spirits on board. There's a lot of pieces involved, but thankfully, once you get a couple pieces like a Strabbit and stuff going, you kind of just find the pieces you need with that Strabbit and Nexusing and stuff like that. Where like your Circle Sky all of a sudden becomes, draw a card, look at the top 3 cards, put one in your hand as well. So Circle Sky is almost like a draw 2, scry 3. It's a fun deck. Again, I played it in multiplayer where I just kind of sat back, no one touched me, and then I just kind of comboed and did like 6 damage with Toxie and all of. It's fun. It's definitely a fun deck. It's cool. It's got interesting stuff. If it gets some more support, some more Thunder Receive stuff, it'll be better. But it definitely has a really coherent strategy. It's a lot of fun, and I know Jack really likes it in Discord. And the last deck is Trifire, Trifernal Fire. Getting out Trifernal quickly. It's super inconsistent. Yeah, let me just do this real quick for this. Real fast. Don't play it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you're running a deck that runs Blazarus for whatever reason, which there are reasons to run Blazarus, don't get me wrong. Yeah, run one Trifernal, but if your deck is built around like the fire control package to get Trifernal out, it's not good because you're not getting Trifernal out very quickly. If your deck is built around getting Trifernal out with Blazarus ability, well then you're letting your opponent kind of get ahead on board state to get Trifernal out to maybe do something. And then if they play anything that has 4 defense, Trifernal is just a big beat stick. It's definitely Trifernal is definitely, if you can get it out, it definitely does. It can do a lot of work. It's just Trifernal as like a deck archetype to try to play and build into. It's not good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It a lot of people like Trifernal. It's not good. So yeah, that's my tier list. I kind of went over all the decks as well. I'm curious what your tier lists are. That we had some deck discussion stuff going on in Discord, so I'll post this there in a little bit. And I guess if you see this video, you can comment on the video. Let me know what you thought. Tell me why I'm wrong, because these are my thoughts. You have your own thoughts, and let me know. And I'll see you guys in the next video. If you don't mind, while you're here, like, subscribe, comment, help me out, help a guy out, share this video. I don't know, do something. I'm having fun playing Elestrals, and let me know what kind of crazy decks I might have missed or that you're trying to play, and I'll let you know what I think of the deck. Like if you have a deck that's not here, comment it below, and I'll comment on it. Have a great one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.